we have riding on the mule train with us today, Tumbleweed Smith. Tumbleweed, you know how to ride the mule train, don't you?
I've ridden it before. Yeah, you betcha. You betcha. But I forgot Bumbo and let's see what
Arbutus.
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 Yeah, let's see. Yeah, I do have a recording of your dad saying that many times. Yeah,
There, little Red.
You do too. Yeah.
Get up there, little Red. Come on, Corina. Hiya, Arbutus.
Yeah, there you go.
You got to get out of here.
You know it too.
Yeah. I heard it once or twice. Tumbleweed. A good day to talk about that name, Bob Smith Lewis.
Yeah.
How did you come up with Tumbleweed Smith?
Well, my radio program was called Tumbleweed when I started it.
And on what station or what?
Well, it started in Littlefield, KZZN, and KHEM in Big Spring. I had a network.
And you live in Big Spring.
Yeah, I live in Big Spring. Yeah, and I'd sign off. And people started calling me Tumbleweed because of the radio program. Yeah, and I use my middle name Smith because it has more rhythm and is more universal than Tumbleweed Lewis. And Tumbleweed, L's and W's are hard to say.
Now, where were you born?
Waco.
So you are a real Texan.
I'm a Baylor man. I'm wearing my Baylor stuff because the girls' basketball at Baylor has won 28 straight games. And we were down there Saturday night for the championship, when they won the championship, the conference championship. And they had confetti all over the place.
Was it yellow and green?
Yes, of course. Everything is green and gold. Yeah, green and gold. Yeah, okay.
Pardon me, green and gold.
Yeah.
Not yellow and green.
And the basketball players, especially Brittany Griner, who's 6'8", she dove into the confetti on the floor and just swam in it, and it was really something to see.
Can you say something about Texas Tech, please?
Baylor beat Texas Tech. Yeah.
Oh, Tumbleweed! Now you're really in the mess.
You've been beat up today, haven't you?
Well, could you say something about A&M or UT?
Listen, A&M, I did a documentary on Pinky Wilson, who wrote the Aggie War Hymn, and I met a lot of A&M folks, and that was a real experience. I did it last year, and it was a great experience. I think I might have been the only person who recorded Pinky Wilson. I went to A&M. I went many trips to A&M working on the documentary. And I said, do you have any video footage or audio footage of Pinky Wilson? No? Come on. I mean, I interviewed him about a month before he passed away. I interviewed him in 1982. And made a great program, and I don't know. It really concerns me that a man of his prominence was not archived at A&M, but I archived it.
Well, do you think that possibly the reason is because I think in more recent years people are getting more aware of the importance of keeping history in every form, not just on paper?
I think that's 90% of it. Another part of it is you think they're going to be around forever, and I have met so many people that I wanted to interview, sure. And I'm sure I know you have too. Anybody who records, who reports, who's curious, and wants to really explain how people lived, which is what I do, and how they enjoy themselves. I think that is more coming to the forefront now, and you're right. I think people are becoming more aware of audio and video archives, and you do a bunch of that.
Well, we sure do try to. The only thing is I can't talk too good.
Well, I didn't know that.
I just don't know what to say.
Yeah, you poor thing. Just shy and retiring.
But
right.
Now, what I want to know, when did you decide you wanted to go into radio, Tumbleweed?
Well, I finished Baylor and went to the Army and went to Europe in the Army, and I was over in Europe 2 years. And when we were coming back into New York Harbor on the troop ship, guys had radios, and they were listening to New York City stations, and they heard a commercial, and they applauded because they hadn't heard a commercial in 2 years. And
that's wonderful.
To me, that was such a symbol of America. And right then, I wanted to do the most American thing there is: news and advertising, reporting, communication. And I've been doing it since I was 25. I mean,
and so what was your first job?
My first job after the Army was working for a small advertising agency in Waco. And I could work there only 6 weeks because the man who had the agency was taking care of the Heart of Texas Fair advertising, and that was going to take 6 weeks. I got to work there 7, and I didn't get paid until at the end of the 6 weeks. I worked for $1 an hour, and I could only work 6 hours a day, and I wouldn't get paid until the end of the 6 weeks. But thank goodness I had enough money from the Army to carry me over, and I was. When I went back to Waco, my former landlady that I stayed with when I was during my senior year at Baylor let me live there free, and so I didn't have many expenses, and so then on my last Friday that I was there at the agency, I didn't know what was next in my life. Didn't have any idea what was next, and my college roommate was the assistant Chamber of Commerce manager in Big Spring. And he called me and said, "There's a guy here who has a radio station who's looking for a salesman. Why don't you come out and try to get that job?" Well, I got that job.
Now, were you married at this time?
No. No, the first weekend that I was in Big Spring, I did meet Susan, who I later married. I got there in 1960. We married in 63. I gave her a chance to grow up.
Was she from Big Spring originally?
Yeah. Yeah. We met at the radio station. So, yeah, that's a big part of our lives.
Sure. That's where Jack and I met.
Really?
Yeah. Imagine that.
Yeah, and we when our first child was born, I had studied journalism in high school, but I didn't study it at all in college. I was doing English and foreign language and drama. And I found out once I got into it and liked all the knobs and switches and the meters and everything like that. And I did news. I was hired as a news director as well as a salesman. And I found out I really liked it, and I got a real nice fellowship to the University of Missouri and went back to graduate school and got a master's.
That probably was one of the better schools, don't you think, to go to?
What do you mean, one of?
You think it's the best?
Well, it's the first. It was the very first journalism school and remains to be the best. I mean,
sorry.
they've got a lot of outstanding graduates.
Let's see, don't say anything about Baylor. Don't say anything bad about the University of Missouri. Okay, what else?
Well,
or Big Spring, or Tumbleweeds.
Well, and then after I got the master's, I went to work at WHO in Des Moines. And we were talking to somebody who had a bucket list today. Well, one of my bucket lists was I wanted to work for a 50,000 watt station and do the 10 o'clock news at night. I did that at WHO. I also wanted to do a network job. And so while I was at WHO, I interviewed an 11-year-old blind girl who was so full of life and so joyous about being able to jump and listen to television and all of that. She was so exuberant, and you just couldn't ignore her, listening to her. And I was doing a television and a radio deal then. And I got back to the station, and somebody heard the radio piece, and they said, well, at the station, they said, why don't you send that to NBC Monitor? Weekend series that the network had, and so I did, and they liked it, and they asked me to do some more stuff. So I was on NBC for about 6 years.
Now, did you have to move, or you just sent it to them?
No, I was a correspondent.
And you stayed there in Des Moines during those years with Monitor.
No, I was in Des Moines just for a year, and then I came back to Texas and ended up at the radio station in Big Spring.
At the same one where you started.
Mm-hmm. But at the time, I was still doing stuff for Monitor, and then I started my program, my radio program, and I was still doing stuff for Monitor, and the radio station that I was on in San Antonio was not affiliated with NBC. And so they were airing my program, and then all of a sudden on weekends I would be on their competitor station on NBC. So I stopped doing the NBC stuff.
The Monitor you stopped.
Yeah, since and so.
Yeah, well, that was only fair. In San Antonio, you were with who?
KYXX.
And now, so when did Sound of Texas come along?
August 1st, 1969. Mm-hmm.
And every weekday, you've had a program since that time?
That's right, nearly 11,000.
How many?
Nearly 11,000.
Near 11,000.
Yeah.
And besides interviewing any of us here at Channel 6, what's the thing that right now pops into your mind of an interview that you've done that has really been unique?
Well, Jon Voight, the movie star, was the first program on the Sound of Texas.
Very first one.
Uh-huh. He was in Big Spring filming Midnight Cowboy at that time, and I interviewed him and a lot of other people. In fact, I interviewed a lot of people because it won the Academy Award for Best Movie in '69, and so I was all over Monitor that weekend. They said, "Yeah, send us some stuff," and so for my 10,000th program, I called Jon Voight. And asked him to be in my 10,000 program, and he was so nice. He was as nice on the 10,000, and he's done 70 movies, at least 70 movies. He said, "I think I've done 70 movies, Bob," and he was as nice.
He called you Bob.
Yeah, well, I was Bob then when I interviewed him, because I interviewed him in '68. And when I was working for the radio station, so I didn't, and then when I started the series, that was the first one, and that was his first movie. Midnight Cowboy was his very first movie.
First one.
Yeah, but he was as nice when I called him, 40 years later, as he was first time I met him.
Well, that's good to know, and that's nice that people are still nice and down to earth.
Absolutely, and he certainly was. And he acted like he remembered me and all that,
Yeah. That's good acting.
Well, sure, you bet. No, he is a good actor. But of the Texas interviews I've done, Gilliam was was absolutely one of the tops for sure.
Well, you know what you started. When you came here, I wish I knew that date that you did actually walked in. You really didn't know what you were walking into, did you?
No.
Buddy Peeler had sent you here.
I guess so. Yeah.
Oh, I know.
All right. Yeah.
And you had no idea. I think you thought, now I'm not sure, that you were going to interview Daddy about alcoholism.
No,
Did you think you were going to interview him?
Mules.
Well, that's the same as alcoholism.
As he told me, the glass ass. That's what.
But you, and I think and there's a TV station right here.
Yeah, well, I think Buddy said he does a TV show from his house. Well, I couldn't ignore that, so I came over here, and I don't know, that story got lots of play.
Well, but you told John Pronk, and where is John now?
I don't know. I haven't heard from him. I understand he is out of the business and paying attention to his grandchildren. I didn't know he was that old, and I can't imagine a person of his stature not doing something in the report.
When it gets in your blood, you know. I was writing a professor I had at Texas Tech, you know, the red and black.
That Baylor beat.
I tried to get that microwave phone away from you. I started saying that microwave. Anyway, just yesterday, Ralph Selmar, and you remember some, and others you want to forget, and some you don't remember. But I remember Ralph Selmar, and through you starting that with John Pronk, well, Mr. Selmar saw us on ABC, and he wrote me a letter, and he was proud, you know. Yeah. He said, I think one of the things he said was names. You know, the most important thing. They asked me, what's the most important thing? I said, names. Mm-hmm. And he said, you learned the lesson well. But I learned that lesson from my mother and daddy, not from Ralph Selmar, really and truly. But Ralph Selmar was a good teacher. And I lost his address, and I found it after years and years, maybe 10 or 15, and I wrote him yesterday, and I told him, I said, I'm sorry, I never answered your letter, but I'm a procrastinator.
15 years, huh?
Anyway, what was I going to say about Mr. Selmar? I don't know. Gosh, I lost the train. But I will tell you this. When I went to school at Tech, there wasn't a mass comm department. There was a journalism department. But I got in trouble, real trouble, because I worked at KTXT FM radio station, and I did Texan Talk. It was just like the Mule Train News, but Texan Talk. And I got an F because they said that I was stealing the news from the newspaper, The Toreador. Well, I wasn't either. I was, you know,
you were ahead of them.
I was sometimes 2 and 3 days ahead, you know. And then another thing, the Toreador got mad at me because I wrote a piece about a concert. And if I remember, it was classical music. And they said, you live in the dorm and you had to be in the dorm at such and such hour. How could you have heard it? And I listened to it on the FM. You know, KTXT FM, you know, and I got an F on that too.
Golly, did you graduate?
Not from Texas Tech. But isn't that funny? You know how they it was before the curve.
I have lectured at Texas Tech, and I have good friends who teach at Texas Tech, and yes, and they do have a very outstanding communication department.
Today.
Yeah, right.
It just wasn't there then, you know, because it was before. Well, it wasn't before radio, but they just weren't keeping up right then with radio. But WT, boy, they were ahead of the curve, and they really did have a good department. You teach in college still?
No, I finished up that. I taught for 34 years at University of Texas Permian Basin in Odessa, and then I had a wonderful opportunity to go to Western Texas College in Snyder. Uh-huh. They were just starting the program. They acted like they wanted me real bad, and so I went there, and I said I'd give you 3 years, uh-huh. And so I was there for 3 years, and then I left at the end of the spring semester last year.
Uh-huh. And what did you teach at both of those colleges?
Nuclear physics.
Thank you. See, some people just tuned in, Tumbleweed. You know that,
well,
and so they need to know.
I rocket science.
We've been talking with the latest rocket scientist who just came back from a stint with NASA.
I have taught broadcast production. Yeah.
And how were you able to teach that when you don't know anything about it?
Oh, you learn a lot from the students.
I had some professors like that, didn't you? At Baylor?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Anything else you want to talk about?
I love coming to Mule Shoe. It's so much fun. I've met so many people here, and I've done so many programs from here thanks to you. And it just, I feel right at home here.
Well, we're glad that you had a cup of coffee or a cup of tea with us. And
I missed the cake. I didn't have any cake to go along.
I just had surgery.
Oh, I know.
I shouldn't be really interviewing you.
You shouldn't have.
It was on my mouth.
You should have cake. You deserve it.
Oh, it's been fun on the Mule Train News, sitting here and riding with Tumbleweed Smith, our friend from Big Spring. And, of course, we encourage you to hear the sound of Texas with Tumbleweed Smith every weekday morning right after 8:45 here on Channel 6. We've been running it now for nearly 30 years. And Tumbleweed, once in a while, a whole bunch of whiles, we've been putting it in the Mule Train too. They've been so good lately.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
So that means they go around the world on Gilliam Advertising, muleshoot.com. Check us out. Get up there, little
Bumbo, Corina, Arbatus.
I'll finish it out. Arbutus, Monkey Paw, Julia, Gray, Isla, and Ole.